And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska aviation weather outlook on Thursday, August 7th, 2025. And to set things up as of this Thursday, we have an area of low pressure crossing the lower Alaska Peninsula. It's waiting for another low. Both of these systems have had connections to dissipating tropical systems. That's why they're moist and persistent in their circulations. And the next one will be coming up for this weekend. That's going to spread some moderate to heavier rainfall along the northeastern Gulf Coast into the Panhandle, especially Saturday evening and pre-dawn Sunday morning. Otherwise, as we get into the day, Friday, we still have an area of low pressure here. It's taking shape as energy and colder air is going to drop southeastward, and that's going to allow temperatures over the weekend to cool here along especially the western half of the mainland. And as that low kind of pivots back to the north and east, the cooler air is going to be driven southeastward across the west side of the state as that system comes up out of the North Pacific and brings some of the moderate to heavier rainfall along, as I said, the northeastern Gulf Coast and Panhandle. But before then, Friday, we still have some areas of rain and rain showers persistent from the first front. Now, as of Thursday, we have this occluded front that's lifting northeastward and weakening. So wind fields will be diminishing Thursday night into Friday compared to what they have been Wednesday and on Thursday. But IFR conditions along areas of the Gulf Coast, outer Panhandle, northern Panhandle. We find IFR conditions off of the Chukchi Sea, northwest coast, and Beaufort Sea coast, and then also down here across the Aleutian chain. For Friday afternoon, there could be a few thunderstorms pop up through the middle Yukon in the western interior in response to the steepening lapse rates aloft because of the shot of colder air dropping southeastward. So there's going to be a bit of a front or trough pivoting eastward, and you could have scattered showers and thunderstorms develop along that Friday afternoon. Along the Gulf Coast, still IFR conditions, especially intercoastal mountains, and for the Panhandle, a fair amount of IFR there. And then back to the west from the southeast bearing north side of the tip of the Alaska Peninsula through the Aleutian chain. On Saturday, more extensive IFR conditions are expected because we have a lot going on. We have the one area of low pressure here, a couple of troughs, cold front coming southeastward. We have the low coming up from the North Pacific into the Gulf. So given the moisture, given the dynamics we expect, and of course precipitation fields, we expect IFR conditions all along the Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, into the Panhandle. Areas of the interior, central western Alaska Range, and then up into the interior, especially southern slopes of the Brooks Range, much of the west coast, and then again across the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And Saturday afternoon, with that low pressure area pushing eastward, we could have some scattered thunderstorms in the east central interior, especially all along the confluence there of the Tanana Yukon River upstream into Yukon Flats and in the higher terrain north and northeast of Fairbanks. So Friday, we look at east central Brooks Range, Anatuvik, and Adigan passes, MVFR conditions expected there. Coming south along the west arm of the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill should generally hold on to IFR conditions for Friday. And as we round up through Rainy Pass, certainly IFR early in the morning there, becoming MVFR. Windy Pass generally holding on to IFR. And Isabel Pass may see a period of IFR conditions in the morning giving way to MVFR. Further east, Mentasta Pass, largely unaffected by that front and moisture, so holding out there at VFR for Friday. As we come down across Copper River Basin, Tanita Pass, IFR in the morning giving way to MVFR. And then Portage Pass should generally be locked into IFR conditions with the exception of the west entrance MVFR, but through the bulk of Portage Pass to Prince William Sound, you're going to have rain and lower ceilings and visibility, so IFR persistent there Friday. And then also in the north end of the Panhandle, expect IFR conditions at Chilkoot and White. So looking at the freezing levels aloft, at the surface first of all, have temperatures down near freezing along the Beaufort Sea coast, especially Utqiagvik to Prudhoe Bay. And then freezing levels aloft are lowest below 8,000 feet beneath this mid and upper level low pressure over the western Gulf, Kodiak Island, south tip there of the Kenai Peninsula back toward the upper part of the Alaska Peninsula. And we have freezing levels aloft to 14,000 feet there along the British Columbia coast and Haida Gwaii. So this feature, all again associated with the low that's come out of the lower Bering and across the Alaska Peninsula today. But of note, this is what we're watching, the shot of colder air coming in off of eastern Russia from the Russian Arctic coast. That's dropping southeastward. It'll be passing through the Bering Strait and down along the west side of the state. So that'll bring cooling temperatures to the western half of the mainland as we go through the course of this weekend. Now, with all that going on, we have two systems to deal with. The remnant moisture from the current front coming up Wednesday, Thursday into the Gulf. So above 12,000 feet where there's precipitation, thicker cloud cover, there could be icing above 12,000 feet. Lower Gulf, 14,000 feet. You saw those higher freezing levels aloft off to the south and east. Now back here to the north and west, we have low pressure situating, getting organized in response to the mid-level energy in a trough dropping southeast, plus the colder temperatures coming in from eastern Russia and out over the Chukchi Sea. That'll be dropping southeastward. So where there is precipitation being developed from those interactions, we expect there could be some moderate icing along western areas of the state above 10,000 feet on Friday. Jet stream level, we have a jet core of over 100 knots, locally 115 knots out over the Gulf, southwest flow into the Panhandle that curves more westerly during the day Friday. Back to the west and northwest. Here is that hint of a trough, the upper trough, that's going to be digging, we say, southeastward with the cooler air. And then 9,000 feet, 700 millibars. We still have a couple of low circulations. The one that's washing out here is the lead low that came up out of this region, out of the eastern Aleutians and across the Alaska Peninsula. But the next low ahead of it, there's an 80-knot wind max at the mid-levels at 700 millibars. And then we have the trough coming on in from the north and west. And as we bring it down to 3,000 feet, we find here's the next low coming up out of the North Pacific. This is the one that has the atmospheric river component that's going to bring moderate to locally heavy rainfall to the Panhandle, northeastern Gulf Coast later Saturday into pre-dawn of Sunday morning. And so this is helping to transport that moisture with winds 35 to locally over 50 knots. And then back to the north and west. Notice the northerly flow a few thousand feet above the surface. In the wake of the cold front, we have northerly flow of 25, 30 knots through the Bering Strait, especially east side of St. Lawrence Island, and that's what's going to help to transport that cooler air along the west side of the state. Now, as far as turbulence on Friday, just a limited area. We had quite a bit of turbulence with the front as it lifted north, but that front's washing out, and we do not anticipate any organized or even isolated moderate turbulence along the Gulf Coast. But back here, kind of in the remnant circulation of the low that's just passed further east, there could be on Friday some moderate turbulence toward the central Aleutians surface to 3,000 feet.